Welcome back to the agenda with your Missoula County Commissioners. I'm Juanita Vero, and I'm here with my fellow commissioners and friends, Josh Slotnick and Dave Strohmeyer. And today we're joined by Judge Landee Holloway, who is Missoula County Justice of the Peace. Welcome back, Landee.
Hi, happy to be here. Thank you.
We're super psyched to have you.
So, a question that I'm sure you never get asked: what the heck is a Justice of the Peace?
Oh.
It's a great question.
I think
it sounds vaguely Western.
Yeah, there's a lot of history to it, but I think that the easy way to say it is the People's Court, or it's also called a county court. Every state titles their courts differently, but for Missoula County, we are a court of limited jurisdiction, and so justice.
What does that mean?
It means that there's limits on the types of cases we can see.
Okay. So what are the limits? What cases come before you?
Primarily misdemeanors. We do criminal misdemeanors. We do what's
the definition of a misdemeanor for?
It's a lower type of crime that has a maximum penalty of up to 1 year in jail. Anything if you get over a year in jail, you're moving on into a felony, which is then seen upstairs in district court.
Wasn't there a monetary?
There is a monetary amount. It's like up to $1,500 in damages. Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So if you wouldn't mind, could you do a little rundown? We've got 3 courts in Missoula.
We do.
It'd be great to know, for people to know, and all of us to know better, why would a person go to municipal court? Why would somebody go to see a Justice of the Peace or Justice Court? And why would they go to district court?
And we also have a federal court right down the
Oh,
street
my goodness.
here,
We
too.
got 4. Thanks,
Yes.
Dave. We got 4 courts.
So I'll stick in the 200 block of West Broadway. The federal courthouse is 200 East Broadway.
Okay.
So municipal court primarily sees citations that come within the city limits. So the police department, those citations, they tend not to do too many civil matters, and so they'll do some orders of protection over there. Now, because municipal court is also a court of limited jurisdiction. So for justice court, we go throughout the county of Missoula. We see citations from the sheriff's department, highway patrol, fish and game, animal control, motor carrier services, all those CDLs out there and the law enforcement they have associated with those. So those are primarily the misdemeanor criminal charges that come into justice court. And sometimes I think when people think about justice court, they only think about the criminal aspect. We also have a full civil side of justice court. In our civil department, we see the majority of landlord-tenant eviction cases in Missoula County. Up to our jurisdiction is $15,000. We also have small claims and then standard collection cases as well that are up to $15,000.
What are small claims?
Small claims, it's a process where it's a swift resolution for a dispute. There needs to be
What's the amount or
the amount is actually in small claims $7,000.
Oh.
There's a limit and it needs to be some certain amount. So it's a very swift process. A plaintiff files a complaint, it's served upon the defendant, and then we get them real quick in the courtroom. So we're still talking about the different types of courts.
Yes, we got district courts though.
And then you up to district courts. And district courts deal with more family matters. They deal with the criminal matters, civil cases that are within the state that exceed our jurisdiction.
So if Justice Court is a court of limited jurisdiction, is District Court a court of unlimited?
Well, they're called a court of general jurisdiction.
General jurisdiction, okay.
Yeah.
And are there issues where a person would go to see you all in justice court and then go to district court?
Yes.
What happens
there?
A
lot of times, every day we hold jail appearances. We hold jail court in the afternoon at 2:30. And so the people that get on that docket are those who are being arrested on out-of-county warrants or maybe probation holds or their new felony matters or misdemeanor matters that have been recently incarcerated. And they're making their what's called initial appearance, and we review that for probable cause, and then we also set bail and release conditions for those folks.
What does that mean, review for probable cause?
We have the balance, right? The branches of government. When law enforcement files a complaint or the county attorney files a complaint, the court needs to review it to make sure that there is probable cause for the stop. And that means would a reasonable person believe that this could have been done by this individual? So we're not talking about beyond a reasonable doubt of what you need to determine to find somebody guilty or prove them guilty in a court. So probable cause. Is there probable cause that they committed this offense? And so is there justification to detain them or hold them in custody? So you may not know this, but Judge Bale and I are on call every weekend to review complaints that come in over the weekend that are filed by the county attorney's office.
Wow. So what happens if you determine there is no probable cause.
Yeah. So, occasionally there's an error made, or maybe there's something was missed, and it depends, right? We have to find probable cause on a felony to hold somebody in custody, and that needs to be determined usually within 48 hours. If we don't find probable cause, I'll let the county attorney know I didn't find probable cause for this charge. And if it's the only holding charge, like if it's the only felony, then they're obligated to let the detention center know and release them. That very seldom happens. There's usually probable cause to hold folks.
So what happens if you determine there's probable cause?
I let the county attorney know, and they take care of it from there. They just tell the jail that there's probable cause, and they'll continue to hold him until they make their appearance in court.
Oh, okay. At that point, there isn't a court date scheduled?
No, that usually happens the next day in court. Yeah.
Well, so it's quick.
It's fast. And so when we do those bail settings, right, so somebody's in custody, we've seen a very small amount of information. It's a charging complaint, which has the charges there, and then the affidavit or probable cause has the more of the story or the details, hopefully including the elements of the offense so that we can find probable cause. We get that information. We see them in the jail docket, or from jail, they make their appearance. The county attorney's office can make a bail argument, and then the public defender who is representing the folks at the jail, or maybe they have retained an attorney by then, gets to make their argument. And then it's up to the justice of the peace to determine whether or not we are going to hold them in custody, or if we should release them, or if they can be released back into the community to be supervised if we believe that there's not an immediate public safety threat, and that they're also going to appear for their future court hearings. We're fortunate that we have pretrial supervision, and so we have the ability to order an individual to report to pretrial supervision and be supervised in the community. Somebody who keep tabs on them to a certain degree.
It's literally a human being keeping checking in on them daily, or how does that work?
It's a pretrial officer. Okay.
And I imagine there's the potential with the pretrial officer, not just that the person shows up for their court date, but actually some of the things that have put them in this position might begin to be addressed through that pretrial process.
Monitoring substance use is one of those things. In some cases, an individual might be required to wear a GPS monitoring device to know where their whereabouts are. I mean, that's all in part of the concept of public safety and keeping our victims safe as well as a defendant goes through the court process.
Are there other parts of pretrial that might help this person begin to address some of the things that got them to the spot where they found themselves in this place?
Well, our pretrial officers do some case management.
That's what I was looking for.
And so, I mean, hopefully they're getting them to the individual to address some of their needs, and maybe pointing them out to resources of what is available in the community and connecting them to services. I think the one thing we have to be careful of, though, remember, this person is innocent until proven guilty, and the concept of pretrial is usually the least restrictive, but to connect them. I think we're all in this together, working on how do we change behavior, hold people accountable, that kind of thing.
Landee, a little different line of question. I suspect for some folks listening, they might not even be aware that such a thing as a justice of the peace exists. At what point did you think to yourself, this is something I want to do?
I was a felony probation officer for a little over 20 years, and I'd done some other work in criminal justice world, and I felt like it was time for me to look for a career change. Being a felony probation and parole officer it's pretty intense. You're doing home searches. You're you're dealing with kind of the same clientele, and I wanted to take a look at where else I could grow and where use my skills. And in talking with a few people, somebody called me up and told me that there was a justice of the peace. My predecessor, Karen Orzak, was retiring, and maybe I should consider that. And when I was first approached with that idea, I was like, are you kidding me? Because I do. I hold judges up, I don't want to say pedestal. I mean, I think that there's a lot of respect and honor that goes into the work of keeping our community safe and making some of those decisions. And so I kind of did a little research, and I talked to a lot of people, and by virtue of me having worked with defendants and law enforcement and the courts in understanding incarceration on both sides, I'd also done some reentry work in the prison system. I feel like I had a really great concept of what it means to keep the community safe, but also how detrimental over-incarceration or how restrictive some things can be, and it can do potentially do more harm to families and our workforce and our community. And so there's a balance, right? There's a balance about how do you help somebody and do that with compassion, but yet you still hold people accountable. And so here I am.
Here you
10
are.
years later.
10 years, okay.
Wow, it's 10 years. Wow.
So, Landee, I remember one of the first times I really interacted with you was when you came to see us and you were talking about road court, which I found super inspiring, but I imagine a lot of people don't know what it is unless they have been involved. Would you mind talking a bit about what road court is?
I love to talk about road court.
Awesome.
Because I think it is an amazing program. I saw a need after I became a judge to do an evidence-based DUI court. And through...
Had you seen this elsewhere in the country, or did you create this out of whole cloth?
Well, my predecessor was doing a DUI court. It was quite different than what we see nowadays. And I had heard about it, and 10 years ago, treatment courts, they're becoming more and more cutting edge. They're evidence-based, they're functioning, they're effective. And so I also believed it was kind of my past career, my personality of wanting to inspire people to grow and to change by holding them accountable. If you think about a probation officer talking to somebody, getting them to change, but also having some pretty direct conversations. And so was successful in obtaining some grant funding. We've brought in well over, in the past 9 years, over $1 million to support road court in the services that we provide.
Oh, and road folks is an acronym.
So road court, you're right. Road court stands for Responsibilities, Opportunities, and Accountability for Drivers. And so it is a treatment court focused for DUIs. It's also accountability. Some people, I think believe treatment courts are soft on crime. And I believe treatment courts are effective because we really get to the root issue of it. Mm-hmm. And so folks who might want to consider road court are those who have been convicted of a misdemeanor DUI, usually a subsequent DUI, a second or a third, or any other traffic-related substance use incident. This is only for misdemeanors, and so our jurisdiction is usually about 12 months, maybe 18 if there's a couple of charges. That's best practices of how long you really need to work with somebody with a substance use issue. We screen folks to make sure that they're appropriate for the program on a risk and needs assessment tool that is set for DUI folks. And then if they meet the threshold of high risk, high needs for the program, then they go over and get a chemical dependency evaluation. And we currently are contracting with Stepping Stones Behavioral Health to do that because continuity of care is important. We need to keep people in treatment and follow them through. If they come back and they are deemed appropriate for treatment and they have a substance abuse disorder, then they're going to be eligible for the program. They have to volunteer and want to do the program.
So they have to volunteer, and it has to be determined that they have a substance use disorder.
Yeah. Yes. And the incentive, why would somebody want to do it, right? So all of their jail time could be waived and up to 70% of their fines, and they could have a probationary driver's license.
Probationary driver's license while they're going through the program?
They could, yes.
How long is the program?
So the program is set out on 5 phases for 12 months. One of the things I think we got to talk about is what do they do in the program, right? Because once we hear, are they eligible and what the benefits are, there's a commitment that comes with that. An individual must report to a misdemeanor probation officer. They have to do chemical dependency treatment. For the first 90 days, they must wear a continuous alcohol monitor on their ankle to make sure that they're not drinking, because that is important for our public safety if we're letting people drive.
It must be pretty difficult for someone who has a substance use disorder, in regular language, they're addicted, to all of a sudden, okay, bam, tomorrow I'm not using my substance. And I better not because I got this monitor on my ankle.
The monitor's only for alcohol, though. Right?
I'm just saying, let's say they're addicted to alcohol and they got a monitor on and it just went from like Monday to Tuesday. Now I can't drink. What happens within road court to deal with that addiction?
You bet. So I'm gonna back you up just for before I respond to that, because Commissioner Vero, you talked about it's just for alcohol. We also require everyone to do random UAs throughout the program because we're testing for other substances. Because DUIs are not just from alcohol. There are marijuana DUIs. There are anything that can impair your system. We have polysubstance use that's happening out there in the community, meaning various different drugs that are in a person's body along with alcohol or marijuana. So your question, Commissioner Schlotnick, is, okay, somebody maybe uses, we're monitoring, how do we deal with that? We have a sanction grid, we have a team, and I have to come back and talk to you about the team who does this with me, because it's not just me. And so we do an appropriate sanction, and that could vary. It depends upon how honest was the person that they use, were they able to process it with their chemical dependency counselor, where are they in the program? Because just as I think you were leading to, Commissioner Schlotnick, is that, somebody's struggling, they need help, right? But that sometimes doesn't come without stumbles along the way. And so we have to be compassionate. There's a treatment plan for them. There is a sanction within the program, and then there is a therapeutic sanction. Sometimes somebody just owning up that they messed up and they want to do better and they're willing to, work with their counselor more is enough, right? I mean, I don't think that our job is to try and incarcerate everyone. That's not what our taxpayers want. That's not what the courts want. That's not what our community wants. But if we're able to get people to change their behavior, and sometimes that takes a little bit of work along the way.
Well, maybe talk a little bit about success and or recidivism.
You bet. We have 93 graduates over the last 9 years in the program. There's some people who have voluntarily quit or have been terminated. There's very few of those, but those are for various reasons. Some of those folks just couldn't stop using, and they ended up back in the court system with some additional consequences or penalties or incarceration.
Watching graduation was road court was one of the most powerful things I've experienced. It was really
I got two coming
special.
up on Thursday if you want to come.
Oh, yeah.
Had a graduate last week. When there's an individual, and of course you have to make sure of anonymity and things, an individual who, when he first started the program, was a very difficult person, and I think I got to bring my probation skills to the table because he wanted to be very angry, and I'm like, well, we're not doing this here, It's like, you're going to have to conform or you're going to be gone, but we want you to be here, and we want to work with you, and we want to help you. And he was difficult, and I got to tell you, anytime I see him on the streets nowadays, I ask him how many days, and that's a thing I ask everybody in the program, what's your sobriety date? So we can celebrate those accomplishments and those goals along the way and those successes. So I saw him on the street a couple of weeks ago, and I hollered at him, and I was at a stoplight, and my window was down, and he came over and he showed me his phone, and I think it was like 1,534 days.
Wow.
And it's just, I see people in the community all the time, and it just gives you this warm feels because you've been able to impact not just that individual, right? You've been able to impact their families. So when they bring their families to graduation, it's awesome because they talk about they never thought their family member could be sober. They didn't think that they could change. They had given up hope. I also think that it's pretty amazing to watch the participants when they graduate. When they graduate and know that they can do hard things, and after a year or so of being sober or working a recovery program, you start to reap the rewards. They reap the rewards in their health, their financial aspect, their employment, their personal confidence. It's just pretty fantastic to watch that growth.
So is there a cohort? Like, do a group of people start at the same time, or do they all start when they start?
They just start when they start.
So is there an opportunity for that kind of peer-to-peer leaning on each other? And
Absolutely. And part of that peer-to-peer happens in their group therapy because they're working together. And in therapy, you have to learn to be vulnerable and you have to trust each other. And if you think about the participants, they're from all walks of life. I mean, we're talking professionals. We're talking people who've been in and out of prison, maybe people who have made their young people who have never been incarcerated at all. It's a variety of people, and the camaraderie that is developed in the program is fantastic.
that community, I imagine, is really helpful to.
Because I think that's what we all want, right?
Absolutely.
We all want to be a part of a community.
Yeah.
And when you come to watch Road Court and we see all this, you hear all the applauding, right?
Yeah.
We applaud. Best practices is there's 10 incentives to every sanction that's imposed. And so whether that's a compliment from me, it's an acknowledgement, it's the team applauding. And I think about some folks who maybe have been down in their life a lot. Have
Never
they
had
ever
that experience.
Never had anybody ever clap for them?
Wow.
Or to say, you know what, I see that you're struggling, and I see you, I hear you, we want to help you. You got to ask us. I tell people all the time, we want to help you learn to set boundaries and advocate. But can I talk about my team?
Please.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So on our road court team, we have a group of dedicated professionals that come from their busy careers, and they come in and hang out with us on Thursdays, every Thursday when we do road court. First of all, my court coordinator, Samantha Arcan, she works for the county, and she's been with me since we began the program in 2018. She's fantastic. I have a contracted defense attorney, Abigail Coburn, and she's been with us since the beginning of the program as well. And so she's not there to represent their defendants' individual rights, but to make sure their rights are represented in the program and as we go through and make decisions. We have representatives from law enforcement. Sergeant Sean Finley from Highway Patrol has been there since the beginning of the program. And then I've had a couple different rotating sheriff deputies, currently Scott Rasmussen. Our treatment providers out of Stepping Stones are there as part of our team. Sherry Riggs runs that program, and then Carmen Corona is our primary counselor. Misdemeanor probation. As you all know, we've kind of done a switch from Missoula Correctional Services over to Missoula County, and our misdemeanor probation officer has been Kim Lahuff, and she's been doing a great job. She came from the felony system, so she understands that role really well. And then we have a prosecutor from the county attorney's office, and that is Chance Carter currently. We've been supported from the county attorney's office since the inception of the program as well.
It's a big and broad-based team.
It is. And I think our team shows up, and we're very engaged in those decisions.
How old's the program again, did you say?
We started in 2018.
Okay.
So we've been around for 8 years, solid years now.
Do you guys design a little bit different plan for each person?
So our treatment provider has a treatment plan, and so that is specific.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's expectations and phases that each person needs to accomplish. All of our participants are required to give back to the community in the way of community service, and they need to accomplish their treatment goals along with making sure that they're substance free as they're moving from phase to phase.
So you've been around for about 8 years or so. Where would you like to see the program 8 years from now?
We continue to do training, and I think it's fantastic where we are. We're just making little changes here and there. We've been evaluated. Our success rate is fantastic. I'd like to see the program continuing. I would also like to say that I do believe at some point in the near future there's going to be a felony DUI treatment court in Missoula. But that is still in the works, but we've been instrumental, some of our members from our team, of helping promote that, and I do believe that's going to be a really good asset
You
to
think
Missoula.
would that be district court?
It would be district court,
It would be
yes.
district court, okay.
So what would make a DUI a felony DUI versus a misdemeanor DUI?
Well, Montana law is the fourth DUI is a felony DUI.
Fourth one.
Fourth or subsequent, and you're going to see folks every once in a while that might have up into the 10, 15 DUIs on their records. And so for me, coming from that felony system previously, it was important to continue to work with those folks just getting into the system and not going on to the additional funding that the Supreme Court needs to obtain. We do a lot of our grant funding. You all have been great to hard fund our court coordinator after a certain amount of time. We've proven that she's beneficial to justice court and to the community. And so we chase money for a lot of our clientele, and I want to continue to work with the misdemeanors.
What's the general landscape of drunk driving laws in Montana?
General landscape, that's kind of a loaded question, Commissioner Vera.
Unload it however you
Yeah,
want.
well said.
Well, we are always way high up on the charts for drunk driving and
Meaning
fatalities,
Missoula?
meaning Montana.
Montana, okay.
But then by virtue of Missoula being a college town in Montana, we also get up there as well. When you ask about the landscape, we continue to see DUIs. They've been kind of holding steady for a couple years. What we're seeing, though, with regards to some of those DUIs out of the toxicology reports out of the crime lab, is that there's more polysubstance, which I referred to earlier, that it's not just alcohol and marijuana, there's also controlled substances and medications. And a lot of times when those blood warrants or those search warrants are getting in for blood and we're getting those toxicology reports, there's people with more substances in their system, and the BAC levels are much greater.
Wow.
I can't remember what the last report is, so I want to be careful throwing out a stat that I don't know. But it's been exceptionally high on what the BAC levels are. So the streets can be dangerous out there. What we do know, though, with regards to drinking and driving, the younger generation is doing a better job of finding drivers and not actually drinking as much. And so,
Are we seeing as many sort of DUIs among younger people as we used to? Just they're using different substances, or just generally speaking, less DUIs with younger people?
well, I don't know that I haven't seen any recent data for that. I do know that in the courtroom, because of the charges that come from Highway Patrol or the Sheriff's Department, I've seen some younger kids getting DUIs. I mean, 16, 17-year-olds. And I realize that substances are an issue in our world, in our state, in our community. And so trying to get those folks into treatment real fast is a good thing, too.
So if someone is out there listening and is thinking to themselves, I've got a friend or family member who I'm worried about is driving under the influence, and any suggestions?
So I think having a direct conversation. I think sometimes we're afraid to bring those conversations to the table. And I think we've all watched TV and saw those interventions where you bring everybody around and have a conversation. But have a conversation. Reach out and see what kind of resources are in the community. And there's groups like Al-Anon, which is for the family of alcoholics, and Al-Anon for the families of those who are other controlled substances. There's the group of AA, but those are only a few of the programs. I mean, a lot of the churches have different groups these days that help support folks. You can get into a chemical dependency assessment or evaluation in a lot of different agencies and therapists around town. When folks come into the courtroom, we often will refer over to, say, Partnership Health, because they're a federally qualified healthcare system, as you all know, but they have some services as well.
How about for the person to initiate that conversation? Because that can, like you said, can be pretty scary. So what are the tools, or where does a person go to learn how to initiate that conversation?
That internet is really good. But I think personally is that you have to speak from the heart. And you have to talk about how your feelings are when you're talking to someone else, and demonstrate that this is having an impact in their life, or it's potentially harming others. I think if we get back to what can we do personally in our own lives, in our own circle of friends, if we're out somewhere where there's an event where people are consuming beverages and it would appear that they're not safe to drive, really being direct about that. Because drunk drivers on the road are killing people every day in our state, in our country. And so what can we do to help prevent that? Have a plan, get a ride if you're going to imbibe. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but...
No, that's good.
But yeah, and I think that I will echo something from our other agency that we work with, Drive Safe Missoula, is that there is no safe amount. And to really make sure you're taking into consideration what your risks are to the community. And you'll hear me, if you come in and watch citations every day, I say it all the time. If you're operating a motor vehicle, you're driving a weapon. You're driving that weapon down the road, and you could hurt anybody on the inside or the outside. And so I think it's a great responsibility we have. And to remind people, it's a privilege to operate a motor vehicle. It's not a right, and we have an obligation to be safe and to keep our community safe.
So, Landee, I want to go back to the kind of broader scope of what you do. Thanks for all that on Road Court. It's super interesting and inspiring. So, given that you've been doing this for 10 years, have you seen any kind of notable changes in the kind of issues that are coming before you, the kind of people that are coming before you? It seems to be maybe something like that might describe society in a way that we hadn't thought of.
I think you're referencing just to who comes into the courtroom.
And what sorts of things brought them there? Yeah, what are there real changes, or it's pretty much like it was 10 years ago?
I think in the criminal side of things, there's a lot of similarities. And I know that's what a lot of people think of justice court, but remember, we have the civil department, right? And so we do landlord-tenant cases and collection cases. COVID has had a huge impact on people, and unemployment, and the higher cost of living. So we see a lot of people come into the courtroom and they're pro se, right? They're representing themselves. In justice court, you don't have to have an attorney. You can represent yourself. But I think that you you just feel the weight of the housing and the cost of housing and people's limited funds. I see that a lot in the courtroom. And although we need to follow the rule of law, I think it's important that as a justice of peace, that I always make sure that I'm addressing those issues with compassion and seeing people for who they are. Because these are folks that are having pretty huge stressors in their life or situations that come into the courtroom. And I think we all want to be seen and heard.
That's good. Thanks.
Tell us about court clerks.
Yeah, what is a clerk anyway?
So I think that oftentimes people see Judge Beal or myself as the face of Justice Court, but you have to know that we have fabulous people behind us working and setting us up and doing all of the work that a court clerk does and preparing the record and taking the minutes and being the face who deals with the public on a regular basis. We have 10 court clerks and a court administrator and 2 court coordinators.
Wow.
So we have a very large staff, and I'm very proud of our staff. They just was talking to a couple of attorneys this morning that said how our staff is so efficient and always helpful. And I know that Judge Beal and I can't say enough about our staff, and our court administrator, Jesse Baresh, does an amazing job of keeping everybody on track.
That's great.
We're so lucky.
Yeah, we are. We are. We've had the great privilege of chatting with Jessie many a time, and we're super excited that she's chosen to work for Missoula County.
Yeah, she is wonderful. Well,
So our last question. Have you stumbled into some little nugget of culture in the last few weeks, months that you feel like is worthy of passing on? This is a book or a movie or a podcast or something someone said that was interesting?
A song or a
A
poem.
song or a poem. Anything.
wow, one of my last books I read, I was just so touched by it. And this is completely off track of what Justice Court is or a Justice of Peace, but Theo of Golden. It is a book by Alan Levi, but it's truly about compassion and healing and how we can help one another. It's one of those books that sucks you in because it's so warm, and in the end you're bawling because it's just about life. And I just think that when we deal with so many complicated things, we just need to have those heartfelt moments and to really hang on to them. So Theo of Golden.
Oh, that's a great way to end. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
ton
Thanks,
for coming
Landee.
by, Landee.
Thank you for your time.
And give your staff our regards and thanks also.
Yeah, I will do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for
you
having
all
me.
for
Thanks, all.
listening. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to The Agenda. If you enjoy these conversations, it would mean a lot if you'd rate and review the show on whichever podcast app you use.
And if you know a friend who would like to keep up with what's happening in local government, be sure to recommend this podcast to them.
The Agenda with the Missoula County Commissioners is made possible with support from Missoula Community Access Television, better known as MCAT, and our staff in the Missoula County Communications Division.
If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email it to communications@missoulacounty.us.
To find out other ways to stay up to date with what's happening in Missoula County, go to missoula.co/county updates.
Thanks for listening.